Hey everyone, Joe Abraham here with Matt Alex at Beyond Academics, another episode of the podcast. And we are actually at EduCause 2022. This is day 2. And we thought this would be a great place to do kind of an off-site, on-site kind of session. But really what we're going to focus on, Matt, today is the outcomes from a ThinkSpace we did last week. So I think it was, October 20th or so? We did ThinkSpace. We had well over 100 people from 40 different schools, and it was really a chance to hear from them on what success and failure looks like in technology implementations, right? So I'm just going to give us some quick data and have you comment on the 3 different areas, and then we'll get into solutions, because we really want today's podcast to be about solutions, okay? So, but reality is, so one of the questions we asked everyone was, what does success look like? Right, in an implementation? How do you know it's going well or has gone well? The top 3 answers were high user adoption and success. So it was all about if the end user is having success after the implementation, they consider that a win. Okay. Another one was if we end up improving the internal processes and there's a boost in productivity. That's another big one that people bubbled up. One person said, and this kind of sums it up, and I'll have you comment on it, success means being able to do what we were sold post-implementation. So what are your thoughts on defining success? And you've seen some complete failure projects that you've had to rescue, but you've also seen some successful ones. What are some elements of a successful implementation?
Yeah, I think the first thing is you have to recognize the value that the new product or technology is providing your campus.
Yeah.
Being able to see that what was put out there as an expectation, as promised, is readily available, that your day yesterday, today is easier.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. 2 is the ability for you to feel ownership to that data, the ownership to the processes. Historically, we've always had back office transactions being done by a unit or an area. Successful projects have the ability to decentralize and make people feel like they have autonomy to do things that they need to do. Also, removing the things that they've done manually for many years is automated for them so that they can focus on the real human element of a campus.
That makes sense. All right. So we've kind of talked about what success looks like. Everyone wants the things our ThinkSpace participants and you just said, but then the reality is a lot of projects are failing, right? They're starting with the best of intent, but they're just not getting over the finish line the way everyone expected. 73% of our participants said that the reason for failures was some combination of leadership or lack of ownership or lack of governance, or lack of success metrics. So we kind of gathered that up as one group. So that's like leading the project and designing the project and running the project. And then 48% of people said there was an issue that led to issues was adoption and adaptation. So maybe the leadership, ownership, governance stuff was fine, but the people didn't adopt the technology or didn't adapt to the technology, so they kept doing what they were doing. So 73% said it's a leadership governance issue. 48% said it's also an adaptation. Where do you lean? Where do you feel one way or the other, or both?
I really believe it's a mindset. When you come into a project that is as complex as a lot of ERP, SIS, cloud, whatever complex CRM systems, you have to have a different mindset. If your mindset is, I'm just going to do what I did yesterday in my current system, you're not going to see the value, the successes that I talked about.
And that's where, so you've talked about this, there's like a race to get requirements and code a system, right? You're saying that's bad leadership, and you're going to have adoption and adaptation issues for sure.
Because what you did yesterday may not be the best practices in the reality of your campus. Also, the technology you're going to may just do it totally different. So if you're not willing to be malleable and be able to adopt what you actually have purchased, then you're going to struggle. Mindset is about enabling your campus to adapt to the technology that's in front of you. Maybe not even in the technology element, but the business process mindset. Like, how do I reimagine a financial aid office? How do I reimagine the admissions office? That's a mindset.
Or our enrollment process before we spend the millions of dollars on the CRM platform or on the ERP or whatever it is.
The reasons that we see failures is that, they're trying to replicate what they did before.
Yeah.
And what happens is they will go through that process, and even though they cut it over and it works, it isn't any better than the legacy that you just left. So you feel like you waited 18 months and you did all
this
testing,
expectation,
and all you got was a fancy front end, but the back end still operates the same way. And the reality of it is, an enrollment request, a shopping cart, you're still doing 1990s selection through a catalog, but you're doing it in a digital manner. Whereas in the future of a campus, you are positioning and promoting the right courses specific to the student. That's a different mindset.
It's almost like, Matt, you're saying, like, if software could talk, it would say, look, stop putting me back in a box. Don't put your 1980s, 2005 processes into me and expect transformation, right? I can do so much more. Put me to the test and let me show you what I can do that you've never thought possible.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I would this analogy I would use is that it would be, if higher ed were to be transformative in the iPhone world, they would be using the iPhone like a rotary. They would stick it to a wall and dial that way and not use anything else. Yet the iPhone has so many different ways of texting and calendaring and being able to have notifications. But if you're not looking at all the benefits of that software
and then designing
around that best benefits of that cloud technology, that CRM technology, which has better experiences and better technology and on demand, if you're still asking the cloud to do what your legacy did, you will have a painful implementation, and your software is going to be crying because they want to do more than just that.
And everyone's going to be unhappy, and then that's when you run into the adaptation issues with the users. Okay, so the one last thing I want to talk about from our ThinkSpace that we gained, and then I want to talk to you about solutions, right? We want this to be about quick solutions. So we asked them over, under, and here's the question. What are some things campuses overestimate going into this process of a big technology implementation, and what are some things they underestimate? The things that bubbled up are, the thing we overestimate the most is the school's internal abilities and capacity. The thing we underestimate the most is the amount of campus involvement it's going to take for a true winning, successful implementation, right? So that's everything from dedicating the right staff to creating the backfill. 68% of people said that's the issue they ran into in their failed project. It was underestimating the amount of human involvement it was going to take. So with that in mind, I want to talk solutions, right? 3 or 4 quick ideas for people, especially those who are about to start a big implementation. One of the things you talk about is the importance of reimagining and then unifying under a new vision. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think this is probably the most important element any campus can do. To be really successful, you have to reimagine your campus. Take the technologies that you are adopting and purchasing and start to reimagine your campus in a way that you've never thought about. We live in a smart retail, smart banking, smart venue, but we don't live in a smart campus. And you have to start reimagining your campus to drive a different experience, a different efficiency, being able to teach students much different, and reimagine it. And once you reimagine it, you have a mission. You have to unify the campuses around it. And the only way you unify it is that everyone has to play a role in building that reimagination stage.
Yep, makes sense. So if those of watching or listening think about a recent big implementation they went through, if there wasn't a significant amount of energy that went into this reimagination process and the unification process, you've already failed, because then everything that came after it is going to have all kinds of issues.
And the reason those projects fail, everyone is unified to what they want.
Right. My silo,
your silo, the other
this
company's silo. This
is how I've done it. Don't tell me I have to change it.
Remember, the vendor and the system integrator have their own motivations.
Right, they have their agendas. So
you need to get everyone unified to say, this is the mission and this is the reimagination we're going to do. Vendor, what are you going to do for me? Mm-hmm. SI, how do you make my processes change? Mm-hmm. How do I make those things through? Okay, campus, how do I imagine together collectively? And you have to give up some things to gain things.
Sure.
as you go forward.
So that we're talking about a lot of give and take and a lot of facilitated conversations that probably aren't happening, but is an important strategy for success, right?
Yes.
Here's another one that I was thinking about. It's the human side. I'm shocked to see how little higher ed puts in time into making sure the human side of these major implementations are taken care of. And what I mean by that is people don't feel that they're heard. So that means is someone makes a big decision and we're going to, we finally got our budget approval for the big software. So we're just going to write our RFPs and go to market and get it. And then we're going to announce it in 18 months we'll be live. And the users, the people who are staff and faculty are like, does anybody care what I have to say? Do you understand what I do? And because the voices aren't heard, that's a huge major human failure, right? Another one is there's no investment into preparing people to adapt. So creating an adaptive mindset, right? So when that's not pre-built in, then you're basically telling people, hey, by the way, we're buying all this expensive software. You're going to have to do things differently, and you better be happy with it. And we haven't helped people adapt. And then there's an adoption curve, right? There's some people who adopt very early on a campus, and then there's others who need a lot of help. And again, if the time isn't put in early to those human elements, we're going to struggle. But investing in the human side is going to create a success metric.
Yeah, I think you have to address the human side because the technology is just technology.
Yeah.
There is no emotion. Whereas humans, they want to feel a part of it. In order for the culture to change, the humans have to recognize this is their transformation.
Yeah.
It isn't the technology's transformation.
Yeah. And it's not
IT's
IT's transformation. It's not the president's transformation.
It is their human transformation.
Yes.
The way that they serve as humans to other humans.
Yep.
This is their opportunity. Historically, we would have just said, let technology do that. But today, Dr. LeBlanc talks about in his book about you have to allow for students to feel that they matter. Mm-hmm. The only one that will be able to show that students matter is humans.
Yep, the staff, the faculty.
The staff, faculty. That's what makes it different than a technology chatbot.
Yep.
I can get the questions I want, but do I get the emotion, the critical thinking, the body language that humans give us? And that is what campuses want. That's what students want. That's what Affinity, that's where you create affinity on your campus, where students are enjoying being on a campus.
Yeah, we've almost made it a requirement for our clients that if they won't let us do ThinkSpaces with their people on anything we're going to do, we're just not even interested in working with them, because then you're basically telling us you don't want to hear your people.
Exactly.
And if you don't want to hear your people, you're setting up for disaster. But an encouragement to anybody listening and watching would be invest in the human side. Reimagine what's possible and unify around that, and then invest in getting people's voices heard and making people feel wanted and part of the process, and that's going to be another success metric. One thing a third one would be, you call it defining the value and setting the right expectations. So talk about that. How is that a success formula?
Yeah, so when you reimagine the campus, you have to understand why are you reimagining the campus that way. You have to start defining the values that you want out of the transformation. And then you have to associate metrics to that, because that's the only way you'll be able to measure it. If you don't have metrics to the value that you're trying to accomplish, you won't know if you're getting there or not. So you got to, one, define the value, and that value may be different throughout the campuses. It could be value throughout the different modules. It could be value between the cutover. There's a value to why you're doing this. You're putting a lot of investment, not only dollar, human capital investment, where you move them away from opportunities to do other things to do this. And if you don't get the value of that transformation, you now have lost the opportunity to have done really creative things in another area.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing you have to do is you have to set the right expectations.
Yeah.
One, you have to recognize the vendors and the SIs, they're going to sell to you because they need to sell a license sale, which is, that's fine.
Sure.
You need to validate it, and you need to hold them accountable and start setting expectations. But you also have to set expectations within your campus. Your SIS, your ERP, your cloud technologies, your CRMs, they are not the silver bullet of it, and the problems you have on campus is not going to get resolved by a technology. So you have to set the expectations that, one, we are going to be malleable in the transformation. Two, let's identify what is the real capabilities of an SIS and what isn't the capabilities of an SIS. That isn't the role of an SIS. That isn't the role of an HR system. we need to think about, what does CRM do? Right now, everyone thinks CRM and SIS
is going to just create this huge enrollment boost.
Enrollment boost and experience, and that isn't it. You have to start thinking about the strategies of that. And so what
are the policies and procedures and structures that are in the way of the technology being able to do what it needs to do, right? So that's part of that reimagination process.
So set expectations across the board from the vendor and their expectations. You know, the sell was good. Now let's get it on paper and make sure those expectations are delivered. Don't over-expect things that they can't do. It's only going to hurt you in the long run. It's going to hurt them. Let's not do that. Then expect what you are responsible for. You're responsible to be a part of this project. You're responsible to
put the right people in place.
Dedicate time to do the right things, the transformation, set expectations that are realistic to the real transformation and the high impact. A lot of times people are taking impact and saying, oh, it's going to be easy. But the actual impact of what that system is going to do is high. So if what you're investing is low, but your impact is high, you're already off.
And just because you got the $5 million budget approval or the $50 million budget approval isn't the reason to go buy the system, right? The budget approval is like step 1 of 150. And what you're talking about is all the important human mindsets, things that need to go into place for a successful project.
You need the budget to be placed. You need to know that I need X number of dollars investment, both from the actual spend of an external party, but also the cost of your internal cost, the backfill. All those things are important. That some of the failures are part of that. You need to set those up ahead of time, and then be very calculating on when you deploy the actual technology implementation. Don't follow a calendar that is driven by your academic calendar. Follow a calendar that allows for you to do the right activities before you embark on it.
It's almost like we're saying transform first up here, right? And in everyone's minds. Change the policies and procedures that are in the way, go to that reimagined, and then install the software, because then you'll be very successful.
If you think about a cloud software, if you think about even technology we use, we adopt how that cloud technology is used. We're not asking, oh, I want that to change. No, we use the website the way it is. We learn to adapt to that technology.
And adapt,
And I think that is part of the issue, that everyone thinks the cloud, you can go and do whatever you want with it. No, that is why having the work ahead of time and laying down the tracks, identifying the mission, the unifying to the thing, and then saying these are things we're going to do. Then go find the right vendor to that, aligns to that mission, that capability, set the expectation, and then drive to a successful project.
You know, there's one last thing I want to bring up, because this is near and dear to my heart, as far as a strategy for success, and that's leadership. We know our ThinkSpace group identified that a lack of leadership, lack of governance, lack of structure, is part of the failure, right? So then what does success look like? What I find in higher ed, even though higher ed is in the business of educating and upskilling and developing people, they do a terrible job of developing and upskilling their own people. There's very little professional development happening. Leaders aren't being built as well as they could. And so the question for anybody going into a major implementation is, how ready are your leaders to lead? Right? Have they been through the professional development? Have they been upskilled? Have they been absolved of any limiting beliefs? Have they been absolved of trust, tradition, and turf issues that's going on in your campus? Have they gone through some emotional intelligence programming? Have they been built up? Because what they're about to experience for the next 18 months is all kinds of ups and downs, and you haven't invested in them. Shame on you. If you have invested in them or are about to invest in them, it's a strategy for success.
So when you think about leadership, and I look at it from a campus perspective, there's a lot of leaders, there's a lot of titles. If you think titles are overinflated in higher ed, right? Everyone has that title. And they lead their area, their unit. They need to lead the mission, the value, the expectations of the campus, of the future. If they're leaders of just an office, you're going to design that office's need in a siloed manner. Leadership is about finding followership to do the mission of the campus. That's when you get the transformation on campus. That's when you start to say the culture changes. Right now, there's a lot of restrictions on how things are done because people take leadership and ownership and kind of mingle it together. And because they own something, they feel like they're a leader. You're not a leader if you just own something. You have to drive yourself to the mission and then lead to that. And you will have followership, and then you'll be able to own the successes of that, as opposed to the successes of how my office operates better, or I do this because my title is here, or I'm presenting at some conference.
Yep.
That isn't leadership.
We have to invest in leaders and make sure they are prepared to lead these very complex systems. So Matt, thanks. The booths are about to open up. There's going to be noise here in a minute, lots of people walking through, but just want to say thanks to all of you for being part of it and joining us for the Future X podcast. We will see you next time.